Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Hilkemeyer, and tonight I have Dr. Kate Highfield. She formerly worked with Early Childhood Australia and now works with the Australian Catholic University. And tonight she's going to be presenting to you on simple robotic toys, tools to facilitate play and learning in STEM. Dr. Kate Highfield, it's absolutely my pleasure to have you. I'm so excited to hear what you have presented tonight. It's all yours. Hi, it's Michael Hilkemeyer here, just jumping in. If you like this video and would really like to know more about robotics in early childhood education or in STEM in early childhood, visit my ICT in Education Teacher Academy and get the first month free. That's right, the first month free, and pay just membership of $37 per month afterwards. So the first month is free and then $37 per month, and you'll get access to all over 30 online PD courses, case studies, resources, and anything else that I could possibly throw in there for you. It is my vault of courses, case studies, and everything. So it is going to be your complete vault for technology integration and professional learning environment. So jump in today, become a member. You'll find the link in the description below.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just going to pause this share for 2 seconds so that we can let that recording come through. For some very odd reason, Zoom is not playing nicely tonight. Now, friends, I'm not sure where you are joining us from, where you have a hailing, but I am in Canberra, and I am joining you from Ngunnawal lands. So I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands wherever you are. Michael, you're in Toowoomba, so I'm not quite sure the lands up there, but I hail from Gadigal territory and today on Ngunnawal lands in Canberra. Alrighty, and let's get that share happening. So friends, robotics, early childhood, do they fit together? How do simple robotics work in early childhood? My guess is that about half of your people have seen one of these. I do laugh when I see them in nurseries being used as plastic chew toys, because this, of course, is a robotic toy, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. As Michael mentioned, I'm an academic at Australian Catholic University. I also have the honour of being course coordinator for the Masters of Early Childhood and Primary Teaching. So if you're thinking about going through into that space, I would love to chat with you, especially if you've got a degree in an alternate area, because that master's program is humming. So friends, often when we think about our work with young children, we think about this play focus. We think about an approach where we're really focusing in on play. However, there are lots of new technologies that really can take play and learning and integrate them in STEM. And a little over 10 years ago, I actually completed my PhD on exactly this topic, on simple robotics. And what does that mean? The robotics have changed since then, but children have not changed. And the learning that's available to us in this space is really quite remarkable. So friends, when we think about Australian perspectives around children's use of technology, we seem to have this, this continuum where we're seeing a lot of parents concerned about children consuming technology, and particularly consuming media. I certainly recognise that iView gets a good workout in our house. I have a 4-year-old, and while meals are being prepared, or, you know, in that quiet calm down after a beautiful day in our early education context, a little bit of screen time happens. And for Jemima, it's predominantly consuming pre-made technology, pre-made content. We then have, over this far extreme, my ideal use of technology, which is where children are creating, where children are using the tools to create digital books, to create artworks, to create interacting objects, etc. But you see, when we think about Australian perspectives on technology, we almost always go to screen time. And that's because these devices, mobile phones and iPads, are really very commonly seen in Australia. And we are commonly focusing on screens. And part of that concern around screen time was what led me to my PhD in the tangible, in looking at what does the tangible do to enable children's thinking. It's still a technology, but it's a technology without the screen. Now, friends, if you'd like to read more about Australian perspectives on technology, please go and read Early Childhood Australia's position statement on young children and digital technology. It has 4 really simple pieces of advice, 4 areas for us to focus on, and I would love for you to have a look at that. I was part of the group that worked on that, and of course it was written by the amazing Leon Straker and Susie Edwards, and it does position healthy media use and screen time in there. But I digress. Let's get on to robotics. So I have a background in STEM and a real passion to see children being able to access powerful ideas. We have decades of research on that. We know that STEM affords different types of thinking and that we have this incredible opportunity to bridge that gap between play and learning using STEM. We also know that technology can assist in developing particular skills in content areas. Now, robotics, of course, comes from the amazing work of Seymour Papert and Logo. And Logo, which was that computer turtle program that you directed around the screen, and Michael, I'm guessing you and I did that in primary school, came out of the... Yeah, Logo programming was the first accessible programming for children, and it was designed by a gentleman named Seymour Papert, who really did lead the way. What was exciting about that was that programming gave children the opportunity to make their thinking visible, to externalize their intuitive expectations. There were really brilliant benefits in mathematics for Logo and some interesting potential to take it further. So when we look at robotics, we see that robotics are the embodiment of Logo. They're a way of allowing children to engage in mathematical problem solving and reflective thinking, and that we can do that in different modes. For me, I'm most interested in play-based modes and play-based modes that lead to STEM. So if you're thinking, what on earth is STEM? I want to take a moment to share this with you. Of course, STEM is an acronym, STEM, not STEM for plants, indeed STEM for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And when we talk about technology, we talk about both digital technology and design technology. Now, often these pieces of the puzzle are thought of as separate pieces of the puzzle. But when we talk about STEM thinking, STEM learning, STEM play, we integrate in some science and technology, or some engineering and mathematics. And we allow children this beautiful cyclic thinking where they can come back and revisit their ideas. They can take steps forwards and steps back. They can iterate their thinking. Now, what excites me about robotics is just by using a robotic device, you're integrating technology, both design technology in planning a path and digital technology because it's a digital tool, but you're also integrating in mathematics because of the movement through space, the geometry, and of course the measurement. Now, you could also be doing scientific thinking, reasoning, investigating, and problem solving. And most children engage in engineering, where you make something and make something better as you look at robotics. So when we talk about using robotic toys, we're really talking about STEM learning. And I hesitate to say that because so often people freak out when we think about STEM because they imagine pushing down a curriculum on young children, whereas in fact, we're talking about a play-based curriculum where children are enabled to do STEM thinking. Now, simple robotics and programmable toys have a long history. It starts way back when with this massive turtle as big as my head, in fact, bigger, called a Roma. Now, the Roma Turtle was so heavy. And I have one in the garage, I confess. I was given one, and gosh, what a great present. It's about 3 kilograms, so really heavy. You definitely didn't want to drop it on your toe. The Roma has since evolved, and it's evolved into a Roma base plate, a primary Roma, an infant Roma, and an early years Roma. And I so hope that's still being sold, because it really gave us a nice progression of programming. The Roma has had babies, and I don't mean that literally, because these are made by different companies. But of course, the Bebot was one of the most accessible toys. And these were often given out by organisations when you did a large order. So we know that lots of services have Bebots, these bright yellow things, in their storerooms, but many don't know how to use them. And we'll touch on them today. We also saw the Probot. He's been discontinued, so we'll leave him to the side. And of course, the Lego products. So Lego RCX, Lego NXT, and then these humanoid robots, which cost often upwards of $1,000. Lots of toys are about in the robotic space, whether they're RoboPets, and there's lots of those, or the Mechanos, or indeed things like Lego We Do Little Bits, which is an interesting STEM toy because it doesn't necessarily move through space, but there are still movable parts that you're combining to create that programmable toy. And we could have a session on any one of these, Michael. There's so many things we could talk about.
There are, aren't there?
Dash and Dot, or as they're now called, Bo and Yana. Sorry, I think they started as Bo and Yana. Oh, I get confused. They were one or the other. Of course, came about. And then Kibo out of Marina Bear's research. And Kibo is lovely because you have to scan a barcode to program Kibo. More recently, about 5 years ago, we saw the Primo Cubetto, and Cubetto is beautiful and slow moving and uses a puzzle interface as the program. And then even more recently, Lego Duplo brought out their very popular steam train. That steam train's kind of fun, I have to say. You put coloured pieces on the track to program the toy. Although, of course, it really does rely, well, no, it doesn't rely on a track, but the program relies on the track. Recently, Fisher-Price jumped into this space with Codapillar. And Codapillar, you plug in pieces of that tail to create your program. But the two I want to really hone in on today are the Ozobot, and the Ozobot is tiny. So look how small the Ozobot is, guys. A little bit of a choking hazard. A little bit of a choking hazard, something to be aware of. But gosh, it's fun. And the last one I want to hone in on today, because it's so commonly used, is this little fella, the Bebot. The Bluebot, sorry. So the Bebot and the Bluebot are made by the same company, but the Bluebot uses something called a clear box technology. And if I turn that on, and I will endeavour to turn it on without turning the sound on, you can see literally inside the device. You can see its speaker, which is where the sound comes out. You can see the buttons. You can see the mechanics to make the wheels work. And of course, you can see its microprocessor and its plates. Now, the Bluebot is quite clever because at its most base level, it is a simple programmable toy. I can use it exactly like this, but it also works by Bluetooth, so you can plug it in and connect it with your iPad. So again, we've got that level of programming. Now, I think I've probably lost a few people, Michael, who are thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't come to talk about products, but we need to have these conversations so that we can get on to what does this mean and what have I got in my storeroom and is it appropriate? Yeah. So simple programmable toys are this really lovely group of toys where there's a simple and direct programming interface where children, very young children from about 3 years of age, can enter their programming without needing to understand numbers, programming systems, and they just use things like arrows to move forward and backwards. What that means is that our youngest learners are able to engage in a playful way without the need of an adult to say, do this, do this, do this, do this. It also means that you don't have to have that formal understanding of mathematics or STEM to be able to have fun. So I mentioned all of these toys, and we might just actually skip over those because this is just a quick overview of those really simple toys. My favorite today is, of course, the Bluebot. Now, STEM, we've touched on it slightly, but the best STEM happens when children ask their own questions, when children engage in their own problem solving. So when children direct a task, whether that task is to go forward, to move from me to you, to move from me to my letter on the board, to make a house, any of these could be tasks. But when a child can tell you what they want the toy to do, they're starting on that STEM journey, where they identify a task or goal, they plan it, where they create a program. And a lot of very young children create that program using embodied action, where they act out. The toy needs to go forward that far and they act it out. Now, this particular one is really clever because it is its own unit of measure. If you want the Bebot to go forward, the Bluebot to go forward, he will go forward his own body length. So he helps us with our planning and our programming. It also gives us that chance to see, did it work or did it not? You observe it. And then, of course, to evaluate, did it work? Yes, finish the task or go back around that cycle again. Now, what's really exciting about that is that there's lots of different strategies that children use, lots of different semiotic systems, and of course, there's that opportunity to represent. Now, a lot of people think, oh God, what does she mean by semiotic systems? That's things like symbols. So on the Bluebot, where it's got an arrow to go forward, it's a symbol. Now, this is where this piece of tech becomes so magic. You see, when children start school, we have this incredible expectation that they will know letters and sounds, that they will understand that that crazy squiggle means a s or a z, because an S could be a s or a z. And they have to understand that this symbol means this. It's the same for numbers. If you draw the numeral 1, it means one object, one thing, one item. So we're encouraging children to begin to understand symbol systems. And we're doing it in a really playful way, without flashcards, without pushing down curriculum, through a way where the children need to understand. And we all know children like pushing buttons, both real buttons and rhetorical, figurative buttons. Friends, as we move into the robotic space, that symbol system, and I am showing it to you on the Bebot here, not because I'm necessarily saying it's the best one, but because one, it's very familiar to many of you, and two, it's easier to photograph. So if we look at the symbol system on the Bebot, you can see that there is a rotate button, and that actually allows the Bebot to rotate 90 degrees. Or as one of my favorite 4-year-olds said, Kate, it's a book turn. It's the same as a book. Isn't that a nice idea? It's the same as a book. So it rotates left or right 90 degrees, and it moves forward or back one step, which, as I said, was its body length. Over here, we've got a clear button that clears out the program because the toy can store up to 40 steps, and a pause button that allows it to just pause in space. So you could go forward, pause, which could symbolize the Bebot visiting someone's house or perhaps dropping off something to grandma. And I say that because one of the lovely ways that we see children using these is using them to act out stories. They can be, you can purchase these plastic hats that click on the back. So instantly your Bebot can become Little Red Riding Hood. Or as you'll see in a few photos later, it can be decorated to be anything. So that last button in the middle is start or execute the program. And it's pretty simple, go. Friends, in the 2010, the button's altered slightly, but it's basically the same thing. And you can see that there's slight angle change on that corner button, but I share that with you. So let's see one in action. Here's our little Bebot, and he's going to go forward one step, one body length. He'll go forward again, and now let's see him do a rotation. Rotates 90 degrees to the right, rotates 90 degrees to the left. So Michael,
Yeah.
How would you program this little Beebot to make a square? I'm not going to make you write it down, but I want you to think about it. Could you make the Beebot make a square?
Oh, absolutely. First, you would press the forward button.
Yeah.
And then you'd press the angle button to go to the right. And then forward button again. And then you would just sort of repeat that until you make the full square.
Beautiful. Congratulations, my friend. I confess I gave that to a maths professor who couldn't work it out. It took him about 40 minutes. It took 4 different efforts to get it right. He was making it far more complicated. When you give this to a 3-year-old, it's incredible what they can do. One of my favourite stories is a little girl, we'll call her Louise. The cutoff date to participate in some of these studies is 3. We really want children to be 3 before they're coming in, partly so that they can give some form of consent. And one of these little girls turned 3 on the day the project started. We'll call her Louise. Louise didn't really engage too much in the 10-week program. She sort of did a lot of observing. So 4 months later, when I went back to the service to pick up the collection of robotic toys, Louise found me, grabbed me by the hand, and there was no way I was going anywhere. She took me over to the shelf. She took the Beebot off the shelf and she said, look what I can do. And she had taught her Beebot to do the hokey pokey. So she sat with her Beebot and she put her Beebot in, she put her Beebot out, she put her Beebot in, and she turned it all about.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. So lovely and such a nice example of perseverance. We saw it with the professor, we see it with the 3-year-olds. Friends, I want to talk about 2 studies that were done a long time ago, but they're really interesting and have recently been replicated. One is in a prior to school context, a long daycare service where the toys were just given as an option, and you can see here there was lots of different play happening, particularly with this group of children, lots of road play. You can see some of the girls did dress up their Beebots. And of course, they made lots of paths and challenges and options. What excited me, though, was that they were encouraged to draw what their robot did throughout their 10-week program, 10-week engagement. And what we see here is incredibly powerful because these children go from rarely making marks to making marks that are truly mathematical. Here's one example to start with, and then the same program at the end. So the one on the left in the red bracket is that child drawing a picture of their robot making a square. The one on the right is the same child 10 weeks later, and you can see their symbol system has evolved quite dramatically. So they've now got a symbol for forward, a symbol for a turn, etc. And you can see their understanding of geometric shape has also increased. This child was almost 4 at the time. Now, what I love about this is that if you ask the child what they'd been doing, they'd been playing. As adults, we impose this lens of they're doing mathematics, they're looking mathematically. But in fact, are they really looking mathematically? No, for children, they're just exploring, they're investigating. Another one, this is a child whose robot was moving forward in a path. In fact, it did make a square. And then at the end, the same child's representation. So you can see that he uses a different symbol system, but you can see the emergence of a square. And again, it's accurate. I love that little arrow, which is a hook.
Isn't that amazing?
It's fun, isn't it?
It is.
And what I just love about this is we were asking the children, well, what did the toy do? And this is their response. And these children didn't do any formal instruction. It was all play-based tasks, challenges, where they really chose what they wanted to focus in on. And that, to me, is where things get exciting. Another example, this is obviously the girl and the Beebot to start with. And then at the end, and I suspect I might be the girl in that picture because we were sitting together. And then at the end, a far more advanced representation. Now, guys, I don't think we want to hear about the school context, so I'm going to very fast, quick flick through those. But again, you can see a very similar pattern with a lot more engagement in that space. So when we look at it, children moved beyond consuming and creating into really deep learning, where they focused in on academic skills. So the academic skills and curriculum goals, the intellectual curriculum goals, are to me very interesting. You see, often we think about academic skills and intellectual goals as different things. So academic skills are things like learning to count, understanding what a square looks like, whereas intellectual goals are where we really want the learning to happen, where children are reasoning, hypothesizing, they're going through that quest for understanding. And I love Lillian Katz's work in this space because we both achieved the academic and the intellectual all through a play-based STEM program. Now, I thought, Michael, that you might want to have a little bit of a play with, a virtual play. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to raise your hopes, but I thought we might like to have a bit of a play with what some of the newer robotics are doing. We've obviously looked at some older images and ideas from Bebots and Probots, but I thought it would be fun to show you Ozobot and this new toy. This one, I obviously get good targeted advertising, came to me through Instagram. Someone on Instagram said, Kate, have you seen this? I love that my friends know me well enough. This one is a really cheap robotic toy. He's called, he's by a company called Happy Cow.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
hilarious. Inductive robot, but interestingly, it's got a series of sensors on the bottom. So if you don't mind, Michael, I'd love to share some of these with you. And I'm going to share this from my iPad. So fingers crossed we can get a decent share happening.
Yep.
All righty. Here we go. You don't need to see Jemima today, but of course she would love to jump in. So really quickly, easy on button. You can see its wheels start spinning as soon as you turn it on. You pop it on a path. I started by pre-drawing my path, and then you can keep on drawing.
Oh, wow.
So now we're tying in mark making. Now I do want to just pause that there and point out this dodgy bit. He didn't like that turn. And so if we replay it, you'll see that that's where the toy fell off the turn, and it does it again, that it just couldn't quite cope with that thinner turn, which is an interesting, I guess, challenge for us. Is if we're thinking about this in terms of mark making, we need to think about how accessible that is for all ages. I love the concept, and I'd love to see it in practice with services. I also want to show you this one, and this is the Ozobot in action. You see the Ozobot, he's just got a little cover on it. This is my yellow cover, and the covers are brilliant because, again, it's creating a bit of protection, but it means you can say, oh, I've got the blue or you've got the yellow. The Ozobot also draws a line, but it has its own code system, and apologies for my dodgy colouring in here, but the coding system is where this gets quite interesting. So we'll have a look at the Ozobot. To turn him on, you have to squeeze him on the sides. This one is a rechargeable toy. As you position, you'll see it flash red because it's recognised the red in my drawn line, similar to our inductive robot. It needs quite a thick line, but as you said, sorry, what was that, Michael?
Oh, it went past the green, and I was expecting to see the green flash up, but just the red, was it? Or?
No, it should have flashed up. I used the wrong colour green. So there's a couple of finicky pieces in there.
Radio.
Yeah, so you saw the green flash up then. It's sort of more of an olive green it's reading, isn't it? These little buttons at the end are quite clever though, because that code means turn around and go back. So if it hits that red and blue, it will turn around and go back on its line.
That is very clever.
And you can see, I know it's fun, isn't it? You can see some of those codes in action there. I'll pause that with the code strip up so you get an idea. So you can make it go slow, fast, turbo, nitro boost. You've got to love a nitro boost. That was fun explaining that to 4-year-olds. Left turn, right turn, straight, and then all of the different colours. Michael, what you can see with these two is this is cheap and cheerful. but a bit of fun. This one is far more expensive, but has a lot more affordances. And it's exactly what we see with the technology generally. Cheap and cheerful, increased affordances.
Yep.
And I think this is where us as educators, we need to be making these really sensible, sustainable decisions. I love the Ozobot. It's a brilliant thing, but unfortunately the Ozobot uses batteries. So you're going to have to either purchase rechargeable batteries or be thinking through the ecological footprint of replacing batteries. Bluebot is rechargeable. The battery is inbuilt and you can just plug it in and recharge. Similarly, with these two, Inductive uses button batteries. It is screwed in, so it meets all the safety standards, but button batteries, again, really significant environmental footprint, whereas Ozobot, more expensive, is rechargeable. It's such an interesting place for us. You don't often think of STEM, robotics, and ecology, but more and more, I think we need to think about our footprints. Now, Michael, questions, comments, thoughts from you or anyone else?
Wow. Well, Dr. Kate, you mentioned that that the Bluebot is your favorite. Would you mind sort of elaborating on that? Why is it, what are the advantages of the Bluebot to oppose with the Ozobot, which I'm trying to say. So so one has a clear, transparent shell and one does, or
absolutely. So there's a number of different reasons for me. One is that sustainability piece, rechargeable batteries, this one you put in your AA's. The other is that this, once it goes, it can go forward, backwards, 90 degrees, left, right. Once it's done that, there are some limitations to it. I have seen teachers do incredible things. You can hook Lego carts on the back, and so you can do all sorts of artworks with them. I've seen teachers sticky tape pens on the back so that they become beautiful mark-making exercises. I'm still dying to see someone doing painting with a Ozobot, but that probably won't happen because of the cost of them. But the Ozobot itself does have some limitations. Now, in some educational contexts, they say that gives educators confidence to use it because they know that if it breaks, dies, falls off the table, that it's unlikely to be the end of the world. This being slightly more expensive does concern some teachers. And before you ask how much they are, I have no idea, because the fluctuating rate of the dollar, I really don't keep up with the costs. And so I do apologise for anyone who wanted that information. The other thing is that for me, the yellow colour inhibits a little bit of the creative opportunities. Yes, you can pop a hat on it and turn her into Red Riding Hood, or pop a green hat on and add frog's feet, but you've still got that really dominant yellow. And some children find that a little bit distracting to a more immersive scenario. And by immersive scenario, I mean things that we're seeing coming in the conceptual play worlds, etc., where we might want to use these devices to tell a story, to really jump in. So I think that there's something around the clear colour that actually allows us to go further. There is another piece for me, and at Michael, as you know, I do a lot of work on apps and screens and digital devices generally, but you can't see inside your phone. You can't see inside your computer or inside your iPad.
No, that's right. I
can't see how it works. I could do some tinkering, and the very gorgeous Honor is doing an amazing thesis on tinkering with technology. We could easily do some tinkering, but it's hard to get inside. And most teachers don't want us to break their phone or their iPad just to look inside. Whereas what this does is allows us to wonder, allows us to say, wow, I wonder what that thing does. Oh, wow, that's a speaker.
That's true. That was going to be my next question, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
How that sort of inspires the imagination and more so maybe the capabilities of young children as they play with these robotics and think, well, this is how that moves, and gets that cognitive sort of process happening.
Absolutely. And for me, it's that thing that so often technology is black box. It's hidden, you can't see inside. Yeah. Whereas here, we're starting to make a plaything clear. We're starting to make those connections. And friends, you haven't thought about it, but you are surrounded by robots. Have you pressed a traffic light lately? Robot. If I press that button, it starts a program. It's a timed program where it turns those traffic lights, and lets you walk across the road. Have you caught a lift lately? Press the button, the program starts, you go up to level 2 and down, etc. We are surrounded by programming
everywhere,
and yet we don't see it and we don't understand it. So for me, opening up that box as much as we can, the digital box, is such a powerful tool. I'm dying to have a clear computer. When Apple bring out a clear computer, I'll be the first ones on their doorstep, or a clear phone for that matter.
Do they have a clear, one of those first Apple computers that they brought out? It was all like half-colored, half-clear sort of thing way back yonder.
Yes. I had a lot of fun as a PhD student doing a thing called Step Back in Time, where we stepped back through every different computer. And those Apple computers, they were fun, weren't they? Those big jelly things. Yes, it's a conversation for another day, how much the tech has changed.
Absolutely.
Do you know the other piece for me? We've focused in tonight a little bit on STEM and robotics. We're focused in a bit on that idea that children can play and learn all of these mathematical concepts, whether it's counting, unit, iteration, measurement. What we haven't touched on is the thinking that these things afford. Because the professor didn't make a square the first time round, he had to come and revisit it. If I was moving from me to you, I guarantee I wouldn't estimate the right number of steps. We'd have to have another go. We'd have to revise our thinking. That piece where failure is okay is where these things become so powerful. In so many young children's lives, and I see it in my daughter as well as in children in early learning services and in schools, in so many children's lives, they're constantly rewarded, whether it's a reward for a touch on the screen or a reward for packing their bag or a reward for learning to tie their shoelaces. You know, we have these externalized rewards. We don't often allow productive failure. And that productive failure piece where you can fall over and get back up again, where you can make a mistake with your robotic and start again, is a really interesting idea. Because this is ephemeral, it moves and it stops and you can start it again, it means that we have a way to really think about our thinking, engage in metacognition, build our resilience muscle, and really have that opportunity for productive failure. It didn't work, I revised it, and it did. And the reward isn't in the teacher saying, great job, well done, ding, ding, ding. The reward is in you achieving your goal. So that piece of iteration, that piece of thinking is where this gets so exciting to me.
Oh, that's so, thought-provoking there, what you just said, Dr. Kate.
Oh, how kind.
You might have already mentioned, and answered this question, but in early childhood, are there certain types of or levels of robotics, that they might start off with and then progress as their capabilities go?
Yeah, so we often thought of the Bbot as a gateway. So the Bbot was where you'd start. But now with these robots that link through to mark making, they possibly are a good starting point, where you start with that one black texture and a big piece of paper and see what it can do. And then you can complicate it. And I love that idea of educators joining in and asking a question, provoking, problem solving. That idea where we can say, oh, I wonder what a red texture would do. Let's have a try. And by no means am I saying teach them the code. What I'm saying is use that as a little stepping up. So I think now we're seeing increasingly toys that have a baseline, just draw with a black line, a complicator, add some color in, Then an even more complicated, let's look at some of the codes, what happens with that red dot and a blue dot in that order, and see what happens. Similarly, you could use the blue bot just as a simple toy, inputting directly through the toy, or then you could move to connecting it with an iPad and using it as a Bluetooth device. Because once you connect to an iPad, you open up additional turns. So instead of it just being a 90-degree turn, you can have a 45-degree turn. And so we can start doing a lot more geometry in there. So I think for me, the blue bot and that ability to do all of those things in-house still come back. And I wish it wasn't. So robotics makers, if you've got something else for me, let me know. But I see it as robust. My Bebot had its 10th birthday the other day. It has been used by thousands of teachers. I've got a pack of them and been, really, and it's 10 years old and still growing strong. I had one Bebot die, and that was because the teacher put it in a dishwasher. They thought that they needed to be sanitized, so she put it in a dishwasher. And the way we knew it died was that the batteries all corroded in the back of it. So if that over 10 years to only have one of them die, I think is remarkable. And I can't say that for all of them, my robotic kit, but certainly for that one.
Also, with robotics, which ones would you recommend for kids with disabilities?
Great question. So I think when we talk about children who are experiencing disabilities, we often, because we're so ableist, we think, right, well, they can't do this. Whereas in fact, they can do so much of this. And often it's just about finding the right toy that can manage their needs. So I have a very beautiful colleague who has a limb difference. And so she doesn't have the dexterity to push buttons with her hand, but she's adapted and she can push buttons by putting a stylus in her mouth. And so she presses buttons with her face, which to me is incredible that she is working in that way. She has found that workaround. We also see that some of the toys that have that Bluetooth connection are really beneficial because there are other input ways. So a child who's limited by mobility might be able to engage through the screen rather than through the touch interface directly. I've also seen a lot of work with these devices with children who are experiencing autism spectrum disorder, particularly children for whom the loud beeping sounds are really quite distracting. And as you end the program, I'll just do a program so you can see it. Listen to this lovely noise. Did you get the noise?
I did.
Yeah. It's in a classroom where you have lots of children having that noise go beep, beep, beep all the time. It's quite grating. So I found a very successful piece is to simply turn off the sound. So you can do the same program. You hear the motor noise, but you don't have the auditory stimulus. So I think when you're looking at the toys, you need to look at the needs of the children in your service or in your classroom and make sure that you're accounting for those needs.
Okay. Well, not so much. Early childhood education is really lays the foundation to many key learning areas, which young children build upon throughout their schooling career. With robotics, how do you see children using robotics more and more within the curriculum in the future?
I actually think that the Australian curriculum particularly really is enabling us lots of impressive ways forward. The Australian curriculum talks about both design technologies and digital technologies. And that's what excites me, because when we're looking at technology, we're not just talking about the digital. We're not just talking about the computer or the robotic. We're talking about the thinking process, that process of designing, that process of iterating, that process of developing a product and revising it. And I think if we look at Australians as a creative country, you know, we are the inventors of the Hills hoist. We are the inventors of Dyson, and the hairdryer is much better than the vacuum cleaner for me. I think when we look at ourselves as inventors and creators, that process of designing with technology is where this gets quite exciting. And what I'm interested in is that concept that we are enabling very young children to be designers and makers with the tech. We're moving away from let's just consume media into let's create. Now, you can absolutely do that with an iPad as well, but I'm interested in what that means for us moving forward. If every preschool child had a chance to create with technology, whether it's create with robotics or create with screens, I think we would be in a different place with our perspectives on how we use technology. You know, I worry that many of our schools still focus on technologies where you are just going through a drill and skill type practice of low-level baseline skills. Now, what's exciting about that is that you can cater for different needs and they can have responsive feedback. Fantastic. But I worry that that's the default, that if we're using technology just for drill and practice type of software, that we're actually missing the point. The point is allowing children to design their own digital destiny, to be creators with media, creators with programs, rather than just consumers.
So the integration of digital technology within early childhood education, it also is responsible for laying the foundations for the development of ICT capabilities. How do you see that evolving, you know, as well throughout primary curriculum and later into secondary?
And robotics is a classic example of that, in that it addresses many cross-curriculum priorities and it gives you that chance to really take it in different directions. You know, whether you're using the Bebot to act out the narrative structure of a story, or using it to look at geospatial locations on mapping and climate change, there are all sorts of different ways we can use the devices. I think when we look at very young children, particularly children in early learning services, my starting point is on e-safety. My starting point is allowing children to make conscious decisions and be really good digital citizens. The amazing Susie Edwards says you can't be a good digital citizen unless you understand how it works. And that's where there's this interesting piece where we need to understand, well, I communicate a message here and it ends up here. How did that work? Where did that connection happen? Robotics isn't the solution for all of that, but it certainly helps us understand that if I press this button, then this happens. If I send this message, it will arrive here. And I think there's an interesting piece there for us as we as teachers try to navigate this divide, try to help connect these buttons around safety, around being good citizens, around providing consent to share images. You know, this is a really nice starting point without getting too hairy in that track. And I'm happy to go down and talk further about that one, but I'm conscious it's a slightly off topic for tonight.
Sure. And is there one final thing that you'd like to tell our listeners about? Is this one key point that you would like them to remember, or to maybe apply, or do? What would you like to tell them?
I think often as teachers, we do the things that we know. We want to feel confident in what we're doing, which means that we tend to revert to the topics, the areas, the inspirations in our teaching, regardless of what age group we're working with, where we feel confident. robotics is one of those places you don't have to feel confident. You can just pop it out there and say, guys, I do not know. Let's find out together. It takes a brave teacher to do that, who says, I don't know, let's co-investigate. Let's look it up. Let's see if our mums and dads know anything about this. Hey, maybe our big brothers or sisters know about this. Who can we ask? Where can we find out? Turn this into a project where you're all inquiring together rather than a didactic teacher-centered, let's do this. I'm reminded in the work that we've done with early learning services and schools, both here and internationally, that the best tasks are the ones where the teachers went, whoa, no idea, let's try and solve it, where the children really directed and created the problems. So my final tip is have a go. Be a co-investigator. You don't have to know how everything works, because the children respect you for it, and they also learn from how you respond to it. In my study, I had a teacher say, no, this is all true. I have to go and read the instruction manual, and put it away. She didn't get the devices out for another 6 weeks. And I'm sure she only got them out because she knew I was coming. Whereas in fact, she'd lost 6 weeks of the children just having a go. Yeah. And I think that's my biggest lesson is don't read the instruction manual, be honestly ignorant and just have a go.
Well, that sounds pretty much like what how young children learn in an early childhood as well, just through playing. And I think with teachers, like, they can do the same sort of thing, just have a go, like you said, and play around with it, and learn through playing.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to move ahead.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that was absolutely sensational. And thank you so much, Dr. Kate Highfield, for that wonderful presentation on simple robotics.
It's fun to chat. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.